Welcome to this special edition of Prop Shop. In this episode, we interview a man who's an artist, writer, designer, and sculptor. His talent has helped create some of the most iconic creatures to ever feature in movie history. From ants to walking trees, from operatic alien divas to the most famous oversized slug in the galaxy. Welcome to the world of John Coppinger.
Well, I always joke and say I'm a clay mechanic because it is that old technology. And if I talk to kids now that say they want to get into special effects and how do I do it, I say, well, maybe you've got to go and use, learn how to use a computer and use CGI, which I started thinking about doing in the 90s, but decided I prefer staying in the real world. So I'm basically a sculptor. So I say I'm a mud mechanic. A bag of mud and a sharp stick. It's Stone Age stuff, but it's still building form in the real world. I like the design aspect. Even if you're given a very tight brief for a creature, there's always something you've got to deal with in terms of making it into a 3D form that works. And bearing in mind that the camera's always moving around objects, it's all horizons and form and volumes. So for me, that's the fascination as a sculptor. I really wanted to study biology and English at school, but I had an art master who wanted me to get into the art room and do more art. And for some reason, I never took that as a subject. But I started going down the art room and burning holes in my socks with an art welder. And Bob White, my art master, said, well, you're not supposed to be down there. As far as I'm concerned, you're not down there, but if you want to talk about it, you know where I am. And he really encouraged me. So I started making welded sculpture. Turn up at weekends and he'd often be there. And he taught me into getting a place in art college. Really all you could do with a diploma in art and design then was go back and be an art teacher. And I wasn't particularly keen on doing that. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I thought I'll go down the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, go down to South Ken and bang on all the doors and say, do you ever need sculptors? And I went for a nostalgic cup of coffee in Soho, opened the Evening Standard, and there was the advert. We want model makers for the Natural History Museum. And it was perfect. It was like the best postgrad course ever. I knew Brian Froud from college, who was the designer on a film called Dark Crystal. So I went to see Brian for a couple of weeks in New York and didn't see so much of New York as the inside of Jim Henson's workshops. So when the crew came to London to do the Dark Crystal filming, they wanted lots of new people in the industry. Puppet makers, puppet operators. They came around the museum workshops looking for fur and feathers and materials, and I got offered a job, so I thought, well no, good, time to jump. I was working with an art director called Malcolm Stone, and he was doing all the landscape interiors, so all the landscape sets. So it was August, mostly the swamp. 90% of what we did was the swamp, and then little bits and pieces for August Mountain. So anything that wiggled or moved or did anything that wasn't directly a creature, a Muppety creature. They promised they wouldn't do that, and of course they did, because they're a Muppet team. Hi guys! Because they're Muppets. Yeah. So there's like a muck monster, there's a big bit of the swamp that eats something, and flying plants that take off. And, so all that stuff. Walking tree, 40-foot walking tree that you don't really see. Did you ever spot that?
No, I can't.
No, because you see, I didn't understand the politics. We'd made this 40-foot walking tree with 3 guys in root suits. I couldn't be a root suit because I didn't have an equity card. So there you go, that's the unions at the time. So we had 3 people in root suits with monitors, 40-foot rig, tree that moved, special effects on a weight rig to pull it and lift it. And the root guys would do this. And I only caught up with the politics on the day. And I ran up to Jim Henson and said, the 40-foot walking tree. And he went, oh yeah, better shoot that. And they filmed it with a moving camera on a track. So you can't see it move. It's like being on a motorway, trying to see if the trees are lashing about, because it's relative motion. Yeah. So it got filmed. Nobody had tried building a puppet that big before, because you probably know there's 2 people inside it, 1 in each arm. There's Mike Edmonds, who's a dwarf in the tail, rowing the tail along. And there's 3 or 4 of the rest of us, 2 out on the front on radio. We did talk briefly to George Lucas about colour, about how the beast was going to look, talked to him on set. The director, Richard Marquand, was busy with such a vast epic film, even on Jabba's palace. There's probably 200 people in there, and each of the creatures would have 2 or 3 people minding them. And in Jabba's case, there's sometimes 8, 9 of us operating him at once. 2 or 3 people underneath, 3 people inside, 2 out front on radio, 1 fixing the makeup. So it was a huge, almost military operation. The person that we talked to was David Tomlin, first assistant director, and he was the one that knew what we were talking about, if there was any question about Jabba. Extraordinary guy. Best compliment any of us ever got was he sort of barged through us with a bullhorn in his hand, because he'd just finished working on Gandhi, operating 250,000 extras, and he still had the bullhorn. And he sort of brushed past us and went, "You've done a good job on that thing." And that's probably platinum, platinum compliment. It sounds arrogant, but he was the peak of puppetry. We were trying all sorts of new materials. The fun with Jabba was he was really research and development all the way through. Nobody had tried anything that big before. Certainly even the foam rubber. Foam latex appliances were things you put on people's faces and maybe on their hands and arms. You mixed it up in a home Kenwood mixer and shoved it in the oven before it collapsed like a souffle. So bits of Jabba were, 4 foot across. And Tom McLaughlin, the foam guy, had to find ways chemically of making that work. So every aspect of him was research and development.
What actually happened to Jabba in the end? Do you know?
Oh yeah, I think I was working on Greystoke, and I knew which. It was in a shed in EMI and a warehouse, and now and again I'd go and pull the tarpaulin and see how he was doing. And foam latex rots very quick, especially if it's near metals. And there was copper in the fiberglass on the throne, and that was like a biological catalyst. That was accelerating the foam rot in a way. But he was still pretty much in one piece. And then one lunchtime I came back from the pub and he was in a skip. And somebody had the eyes, which is the bit I would have had, and they trashed him. I don't know why.
Thrown him in a skip and just seen his tail sticking about.
It was, yeah, it was just the tail hanging over the edge of the skip. Yeah. And the Diva was a combination of the design, the costume with Vin Burnham's costume department, because I was doing all the sculptural bits, but all the corsetry was being done by Vin Burnham and her team. And Mai Wen Lebesco, the actress, because she was just brilliant. She's up on 14-inch stilts with this huge costume on. She stood about 8 foot, 9 foot when she's finished. And she's running about doing, rock chick stuff, lashing the tentacles about. Another good example of CG, because originally they were going to do those tentacles with CG. And we were at Covent Garden Opera House on a night shoot. Luke Besson insisted that nobody see the costume until they opened the curtains. So there's 3,000 extras, and the first time you see the Diva, he got a full reaction. He got a real full reaction, because everybody went, Jesus. And that was as much Mai Wen's performance as what we put on her. The tentacles were plastozote with silicone and iridescent powder on, and the lighting guy, Thierry Abragast, had lit it so well they looked like glass. And Luke Besson pulled me and my boss Nick over to the little black and white monitor and said, "Look, it looks like glass, we don't need CG." So a combination of her performance and materials.
Well, that's it for this special edition of Prop Shop, and our great thanks goes to John for giving up his time to talk to us. If you would like to know more about John and his work, then you can check out his website. To keep up to date with all of our films here at Bell TV, remember to hit the subscribe button or find us via any of these methods. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.